think there's quite a few of you now, so we can go ahead and get started. So hello everyone and welcome to this masterclass on how to succeed at the SQE with BPP University. Whether you're just beginning your SQE journey or seeking final advice before the exams, this is your chance to gain the knowledge and confidence you need to succeed. We've got a great panel today and a lot to get through, so we hope that you enjoy this masterclass and feel a lot more prepared to tackle the Solicitor's qualifying exam. So we always start a masterclass with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this masterclass, you should know more about the SQE and how to prepare, know how to tackle the exams and how to succeed, and learn more about BPP and the resources they offer for aspiring lawyers like yourselves. Before I hand over to Rob and Caroline, I'm just going to go over some house rules. So firstly, please use the online question tool to post any questions that you might have, and I'll be posting them to our speakers at the end. Please note that this masterclass will be recorded. The recording of this session will be sent to all registrants after the session in a follow-up email, and it will be available on our YouTube channel shortly as well. Also, just to say we have so many fantastic events coming up over this term, so please check out the Law Careers Net events page. We're hosting 2 more masterclasses with BPP that are not to be missed. The first one is on Tuesday, the 18th of February, and that's all about how to successfully fund your legal training. So it'll be a great follow-up to this masterclass. The other masterclass we're running with BPP will be on top tips for developing your commercial awareness, and that's happening at the end of March. So keep an eye out for in the follow-up email tomorrow, which will include links for you to register for those masterclasses. Also, just to say, if you're a first-year law student, we highly recommend you register for our upcoming first-year bootcamp next Tuesday. The session will include information on how to research and apply to law firms, how to build that important commercial awareness, and you also get the opportunity to network with leading law firms as well. So it's an excellent opportunity to get ahead in your first year, so make sure to register for that as well via the follow-up email or by going straight to the LCN's events page. Okay, so with that out the way, I'm just going to start off by asking all attendees to answer the question on the screen so our panelists can get an idea of who's joining us today. So a poll should pop up on your screen if you could please answer that. So what stage are you at currently? Okay, I think that's majority of you. I'm just going to share the results. So seems majority of you are postgraduate students, and also quite a lot of you are in work. And then we have a similar mix of first year and non-law students as well. And great, so this kind of is a good indication for our panelists today to understand what stage you're at. And just quickly, I would like to find out what your main concerns are about SQE. So I'll be popping up one more poll for you to answer as well. That should be on your screen now. So what is your biggest concern about the SQE? Is it understanding how the SQE works? Is it preparing for the SQE? Passing the SQE, which I assume will be a lot of you, funding the preparation courses and assessment, or all of the above? Okay, just going to share those results. As to be expected, 50% of you are most concerned about passing the SQE, which is very valid. And I'm sure our panelists today will be alleviating a lot of these worries. And also quite a lot of you have answered all of the above. So that's good to know. Great, so with this out of the way, I think it's a great time to hand over to our great panelists. So Rob and Caroline, to you, please.
Thank you, Dimitar, and welcome everyone. Of course, very interesting to see what people are looking to do, and I think we will tailor our things accordingly. We will talk a little bit about the structure of the SQE, but we'll focus a lot on how to pass. So I should start with an introduction. So my name's Robert Hiscocks. I am the head of law for our campus in Cambridge, but for our purposes, perhaps more importantly, I also teach criminal law and practice on the SQE, and I'm joined by Caroline Rayson. So Caroline, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, my name's Caroline Rayson and I am the award leader for the SQE1 programmes at BPP, which means that I'm responsible for the overall experience that students have when they are preparing for SQE1. So I've got a bit of experience as well of this newfangled regime that we all speak of.
Yes. I mean, it's almost no longer newfangled, isn't it? Because it's been actually running for 2 or 3 years. So
Yeah.
we have started to build up quite a lot of experience, and we can talk fairly authoritatively about what goes on in the course and what you need to do to succeed. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. So we'll talk a little bit about BPP and what we do. We'll give a fairly brief overview of the SQE, talk about the type of courses you can do. We'll talk a lot about SQE pass rates, how you choose the right course, and then how to prepare, which I think is a key issue for the people who are here today. So I'm going to start off just talking a little about BPP. You may have heard of us, you may not. You may have some preconceptions as to what we do. So our objective, as it says here, is building careers through education. And we have been doing this now for over 40 years. 30 years of those running the law school and working with a huge variety of students from all sorts of different backgrounds to help them in that vital stage going from university into their career. Now, we're well known for training the trainees of some of the big city law firms, 4 of the 5 Magic Circle firms, and hundreds, if not thousands, of students from all sorts of other firms. But I do need to emphasize that we have at least as many students who, in one way or another, are funding their way through their studies. So our students represent the whole gamut of different backgrounds and different career aspirations. And we're not just focusing solely on the big city firms. So we can talk a lot about the different experiences of those students and how they get through. We have a large number of centres across the country: London, Bristol, Cambridge, my own centre, Birmingham, Leeds and Manchester. And in all of these centres, we offer teaching for the SQE programmes. We also have a thriving online community as well, who do exactly the same courses, but an online version from all over the country and indeed all over the world. And we'll talk about the pass rates for the SQE later. We've been very open up front about our pass rates from the beginning. And you'll see that ours are very high and consistently high, and some of the highest amongst everyone who publishes rates. The SRA are intending to publish standardized pass rates for SQE for different providers, but I think they're a way off achieving that. But we do as much as we can. We'll talk about how we gather our stats later on. So I mentioned that we do work with a lot of firms, and you're going to see the names of a few of these firms as we go through here. Now, many of these firms will be familiar to you. You will have heard of those. Some of you may be applying to these firms or firms like them. But there is a huge range of different firms that we operate in. And the ones we're showing at the moment are just some of the vast majority of different firms we do. And you can see the list of these is quite large. We've got big city law firms, regional firms, smaller firms. It's impossible to count up the number of different firms we work with a variety of different aspirations and career paths. And as we say, many students who don't yet have those training contracts or qualifying work experience arranged, as it's now called. And so we do have a thriving careers team who assist those students in developing those careers. We know that that side of things is as important as the training for the SQE itself. But obviously I appreciate that it's the SQE that we want to be focusing on. So I'm going to hand over to Caroline now, and she'll talk us through a little bit about what it involves and start talking about the process of the training. Caroline, over to you.
Thanks, Rob. So everybody, you may have seen this slide before, you may be entirely familiar with this regime, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about it because it's useful to have a foundational start before we talk about the wider regime. So in order to qualify as a solicitor under the SQE route, if we start top right, you need to have a degree, an undergraduate degree that is, or an equivalent qualification. So for most people, that will be an undergraduate degree. Note, as it says on the slide, it's not obligatory to have a law degree. And of course, historically it wasn't, because alternatively you could do a law conversion. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but just you must have an undergraduate degree or equivalent. You need to pass both SQE1 and SQE2. And as it says there, you have to pass both papers of SQE1 before you can even sit SQE2. And in very broad terms, SQE1 is about knowledge and SQE2 is about skills. That's a simplistic interpretation, but that, for the purposes of this slide, that's enough. You need to have assembled 2 years or equivalent qualifying work experience. Now, that's an expression that Rob's used already. The old language under the LPC route was training contract. What we find is a lot of law firms actually still use training contract. That's language they're comfortable with. But technically, under this regime, it's called qualifying work experience. It's a bit of a lawyer's definition, but of course you're all training to be lawyers, so that would appeal to you. So qualifying work experience is much more flexible than the old training contract. I just need to go back to the slides, Rob, if that's okay. There we go. It needs to be at least 2 years, but it's more flexible than the old way. So you can do it in up to 4 different organisations. You can do it overseas. The key thing is that anything you want to count as QWE, you must have had signed off by somebody who's a qualified England and Wales solicitor. If you've got questions about the detail of QWE, the best thing to do is to go onto the SRA's SQE website, which is something we can sort of tell you about a bit later. We can give you a link for that, but you can just Google it as well, because this QWE regime belongs to the SRA. It's their beast. And then the final part of that circle, you need to be a suitable character. Now, I'm sure that you are all a suitable character, and this isn't a change, actually. This is the same as under the previous regime. So, for example, if somebody has a conviction for theft, for example, that's going to be very tricky in terms of being able to qualify. If anybody does have anything on their record they might need to ask the SRA about, this is a good time to do that. Okay, so that is how you qualify as a solicitor under this new regime. Now, I talked about needing to pass SQE1 and SQE2, and that's what the next couple of slides are here to explain. So we have this FLK concept that you see at the top of the slide. That stands for functioning legal knowledge. And basically, the SRA has decided that is the knowledge you need to be a qualified solicitor. And the innovative thing under the SQE regime is that the functioning legal knowledge encompasses both what we would call underlying law subjects and what we would call practice subjects. So the underlying law subjects there appear in blue on the slide. These are subjects that we would expect that you would have studied before you approach the sharp end of your SQE studies. Land, trusts, crime, contract, tort, public is basically what that sort of shakes down as. And many of you will have done a law degree, or you'll be doing a law degree now. Many of you will have done a law conversion. We firmly believe at BPP that to be able to succeed with the SQE, you need a solid foundation in these subjects, which means you either need to have done a law degree or you need to have done a law conversion. And we believe that strongly enough that we require students going on to our programmes to have done that before they come to us. We think that gives you the best possible chance of succeeding. The other half of the FLK, functioning legal knowledge subjects, appear now in black on the slide. Now, these are what we would call practice subjects, and in very broad terms, they're what people used to study in the first part of the LPC. So you see business law and practice, so how companies, how partnerships work, dispute resolution, that's civil litigation, so court work that is non-criminal. Property practice, that's leasehold, freehold, property work, which takes your land work and takes it into the law firm. Wills and the administration of estates, so that again is a very practical subject. You might call that probate. So that is where you're drafting people's wills, but also where you're dealing with their estate when they've died. Okay, and of course that will draw quite a lot on the trust's work that you will have done in your undergrad or your conversion. And then the final thing, criminal law and practice, is taking the crime that you know all about and taking it into the police station and into the courtroom. And that's what Rob teaches on the SQE1. And then you'll see there's also some other bits and pieces to do with solicitors' accounts. There's also some professional conduct work that you will do with some of the ethics which underpin everything. Now, SQE1 is challenging in that it is all multiple choice questions. So each of paper 1 and paper 2 consists of 180 multiple choice questions. They're very long, these exams, so they are 5 hours, 6 minutes per exam, per paper. But the good thing from your perspective is those papers are split in half. So you effectively do 2 hours 33, have a break of an hour, and then do the other 2 hours 33 for each of the papers. Now, you may have friends who've sat these before. These exams went on last week and the week before, so they're very much in everybody's mind. You sit these in Pearson VUE test centres, so you can sit them across the country and to a certain extent across the world. They are very, very closed book indeed. You can take basically nothing into the room with you. So they're a particular kind of assessment. They are challenging. They are challenging enough that we really believe that you need to go into them as well prepared as you possibly can be to make the best of your opportunity. We move on to SQE2, Rob. So I mentioned that SQE1 is all about knowledge. SQE2, in simplistic terms, is all about skills. So you see on the left there, you've got the oral skill of interviewing, which involves also writing an attendance note. So there's a backup written skill, and also advocacy. So advocacy is something you will generally only meet in a contentious situation. So maybe in criminal or civil advocacy. Then you have written skills, case and matter analysis, which is, as the name suggests, analysing a legal problem and advising your client, legal research, legal writing, legal drafting. These are the absolute bread and butter of what lawyers need to do in the office, particularly when they're solicitors. And basically, when you sit SQE2, you undertake a whole series of mini assessments. As it says at the top, 16 tasks with no choices. So you undertake some opportunities to demonstrate each of these skills, multiple opportunities, and you have those in different contexts. So you might have a legal research thing that's focused in property, then you might have a different legal research assessment, which maybe is based in business law and practice. Okay, they are undertaken online for the written skills, so very like SQE1, and they are taken face-to-face for the oral skills. Now, that is different from the whole of the rest of the regime. Be aware that as it stands, it's relatively limited where you can sit SQE2. So that is, many more students will need to travel to sit SQE2 because they are face-to-face. You do London, Cardiff, Birmingham and Manchester at the moment. There may be more in due course. That may be as many as that ever are centres to sit. One thing just to mention before we finish here, I say these are skills assessments, but it's really important to understand that when you sit SQE2, as it says right in the middle at the top of the slide, you're being assessed both on the skill, but also on your knowledge of the law that underpins the scenario you're talking about. So you can't do SQE1 and forget all about it, because you will need to bring that knowledge with you in SQE2. So if you have a property scenario in your legal writing, not only will you need to be able to show that you can write well as a lawyer, you will also need to be able to demonstrate your understanding of the relevant statute or the relevant piece of law that deals with. So SQE2, again, this is properly challenging. It is something that generally the pass rate is higher, and we'll talk about pass rates later. Partly, of course, because you need to have passed SQE1 to be able to attempt SQE2. It's a lot to take on, but if you're well prepared, students tend to do pretty well on SQE2. We move on to the next slide, Rob, just look at the fees for a moment, because this is something it's really, really important to have in mind. The centralised assessments are relatively expensive. You will see SQE1, a bit more than £1,800. SQE2 is nearly £3,000. Okay, so we're looking at nearly £5,000 to sit them in total. Those fees will be different. They will be separate from the fees that you'll be paying for any preparation course that you are doing. Okay, so when you're thinking about cash flow for doing the SQE, it's really important to understand that you're paying for your training, but you also need to think about how you'll be funding those centralised assessments. Another very important thing to say, and another reason to go in well prepared, is that if you have to resit any aspect of the SQE regime, in broad terms, you pay the full fee again. And the only exception to that is if you were to pass one, fail one of SQE1, you'd pay a half fee because you'd only be sitting one paper, but otherwise you pay the full amount again. Okay. And that is different from most universities' fee structures when it comes to paying for assessments. Right, now, Rob, I think I'm handing to you to talk about pass rates, aren't I?
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much, Caroline. So this is, I think, one of the most important issues to deal with, and it's of course a matter which is of concern to everyone. I think a lot of you, from the answers you gave to those surveys that I'll put up right at the start, are well aware of the difficulty involved in passing, particularly SQE1. So the pass rate for the SQE assessments themselves have varied a little bit, but you can see from this that they are fairly consistently around the 50% to 59% mark, which means that it's clearly a tough exam to pass. And Caroline has highlighted some of the factors involved in that. But alongside that, you've got the pass rates of our students taking those same assessments. And this isn't the pass rate of students taking our own assessments. These are students taking the SQE assessments. And you can see they are markedly high. Now, we work very hard to get these as accurate as we can. So you'll see it's noted here that we use the same metric as the SRA. And we do require all our students to indicate to us what their results are for the SQE so that we can give everyone these accurate assessments. And students are very good at doing this, so we do get a very high return rate. So we have a lot of confidence in these figures, both in the way we put them together and the response rate we get. So you can see from these that our pass rates are significantly in excess of the national pass rate. So thinking about how we achieve this, I mean, there are a number of factors, and Caroline has already touched on some of them. It's really important, as she said, to get that baseline knowledge of the underlying law, those things that you will have studied in an undergraduate degree or in a conversion course. And that's one of the reasons why we say, if students come out of our course, you have to have done those courses first, because it's not feasible for us to teach you all of that in the short period of time we have. So you have to have that underlying law, but you've got to keep that knowledge fresh. You can't assume it's there. So one of the things that we do is we give you lots of opportunity to revise and practice that. Caroline has mentioned the fact that these are all MCQs, and so we give you lots of opportunity to practice those MCQs all the way through, both in informal settings and in formal settings as well. But it's also important that we teach you the new things and use those as the opportunity to revise. And the teaching has to involve more than MCTs. MCTs are a very good way of showing your understanding and testing your understanding, not necessarily a good way of actually learning the topic in the first instance. So the focus in our workshops is very much sharing knowledge, sharing best practice, and sharing understanding of the law in the context of scenarios which are realistic and reflective of practice, so that you can really test and understand your knowledge before then retesting yourself in those MCTs. So it really pays to put all that work in a context where you've got that support and feedback from your peers, from tutors, etc. If we move on to SQE2 results, as Caroline alluded, the results for SQE2 are significantly higher than they are for SQE1, and that's no great surprise given that, as she mentioned, you have to pass SQE1 before you can register for SQE2. So SQE1 does act as a sort of gatekeeper to that extent. But you can see even here that the results we have are in excess of that national pass rate, very much for the same reason. And in SQE2, our focus is on giving students the opportunities to practice those skills, both in workshops and then in formative assessments, where you really get a lot of very good feedback on how you're doing, what you need to improve. And it's getting that feedback. It's very difficult in an isolated, self-study thing to get good feedback, particularly on these skills, as to how you're doing and how you succeed. Okay, so the key thing we need to move on to is choosing the right SQE preparation course. And this is one that Caroline are going to take together. There are a lot of factors that you're going to be thinking about in order to decide what to do. So Caroline, let's start with you. Just what do you think are, perhaps from your point of view, a couple of important factors to for our attendees to think about here?
Okay, well, one I would just pick there is bottom left in terms of law firms' preferences. Of course, all of our clients are really important, but the thing that's really helpful to us about working with a lot of law firms across the country is we get to hear from the horse's mouth what it is that they value, what they think is important, how they think that people coming to them as trainees should be taught. So that really helps keep our understanding and knowledge fresh of what's happening in practice. So I think that's a really good aspect of what we can offer. I think you've already covered the pass rates point, haven't you, Rob? Top line, second one in funding options, I think is also an interesting one, because I know for many students, it's going to be challenging to pay for yourself to train to do the SQE. It's a lot to take on. We've talked about all of that, and also the cost of the assessments. Now, one thing that we do, and which a lot of students take advantage of, is that we package a lot of our SQE programs as master's degrees. So if you're a domestic student who hasn't used the master's funding before, you'll be able to use the Student Loan Company England funding, or England, Scotland, Wales, of course, funding for this, which will help. It won't cover absolutely everything, but for a lot of students, it really helps to offset a significant amount of the upfront costs that will be attracted by the SQE programs.
Thanks very much, Caroline. Now I'm going to pick up on the first of those and take us on to the red circle down the bottom. So Caroline was talking about law firms' preferences. And what they're interested in, they want people to pass SQE. It's a requirement, and so obviously they need to make sure their trainees do that. But they're interested in a lot more than just passing a test. They're interested in people who are developing their skills to actually practice. And SQE1 particularly, perhaps less true for SQE2, but certainly SQE1, is focusing very much on knowledge and passing on that knowledge. But there is so much more to being a solicitor. And the focus we have, not just in our teaching for SQE2, but also starting off in SQE1, is actually developing the skills and the knowledge and the understanding that you need to succeed in a career as a solicitor. Now, some people are worried that, well, does that really help us pass SQE1? Absolutely, yes, it does. Because by learning the knowledge and refreshing your knowledge in the context of exercising those skills helps embed that knowledge into your head as well. So the career preparation over and above pure SQE test preparation is really important. And the other one I would pick out there is it helps to have the regular live teaching, whether you do it online, live or face-to-face. Getting the feedback from your tutors, from your fellow students in an environment where you're all very supportive is really crucial to understanding how you're progressing. There are ways you can test yourself, but you don't get the same level of understanding. Now, of course, that comes with a drawback in terms of cost, and the test preparation approach is often cheaper. That's absolutely true. But Caroline's already mentioned then the funding options that the courses we offer give you. So I think, Caroline, unless there's anything else you think we need to add to this.
I think that the only other thing I would just mention, Rob, is that we've thought quite carefully about the timings of our programmes. So that's bottom right there. You may well know there are 2 sets of SQE1 per year. And what we do is to line up our start dates for our programmes so that both part-time and full-time students are delivered at a suitable point to be ready and able and willing to sit SQE1. So for example, students will be joining us at the end of February. If they're full-time, they will be ready just in time to go in and sit the July SQE1 centralised assessments. If they join us in February part-time, they will be ready, they'll have finished their teaching sort of in November. They will be then going into the January 26 SQE1 centralised assessment. So we do our best to make sure that that timing works neatly to deliver you with enough time for some revision into those centralised assessments at the right time.
Thank you very much. So the next thing we want to move on to is actually discussing the courses that we offer that are going to help you to prepare. So Caroline, I think you're going to take this one and talk us through the courses.
Absolutely. Now, somebody has asked a private question about this, and I said I'd come and talk to it. So let's just think about it. As the slide says, our most popular course by far is what we call LLM SQE 1 and 2. And that's partly because of the master's funding point, but it's also because of what it includes. So it includes training for sitting SQE1, and that's what we call SQE1 preparation. And if you're a full-time student, that's a term's worth of study. If you are a part-time student, that's more like 2.5 terms worth of study. You go into SQE2 training after that, and that prepares you, as the name suggests, for SQE2. Now, those together are a postgraduate diploma, and so you can choose to sign up just to do that postgraduate diploma, which is called SQE 1 and 2 diploma, very originally. But many students choose to take a 3rd term, and I think there might be one more click. There we go. And do what we call essentials for practice. Now, one thing that's taken a little bit of getting used to about the SQE regime is that under the old LPC world, you used to do what we called electives. You'd do specialist subjects as the final part of the LPC. And practice, law firms liked that because it meant that students could begin to get a little bit more in-depth knowledge about their areas of law. Now, that's something that doesn't exist at all under the SQE regime, but which many law firms have told us they value. And we feel it helps you become a much better candidate, much better trainee, if you've had a chance to have that specialist knowledge. So you would pick, if you did Essentials for Practice as part of your programme, which if you did the Masters you would pick one of the 3 streams mentioned at the top there. So general practice, which is things like employment and medical negligence and personal injury, that sort of thing. Commercial, which is commercial contracts, commercial property, that sort of thing. Corporate, which is more the corporate. So for example, mergers and acquisitions, that sort of thing, debt finance. So those are 3 different sort of specialisms that you would follow. Alongside that, we really help you to build skills and behaviours that will help make you a really successful trainee. You'll be understanding the law firm as a business. How does it deal with financing? How does it deal with client care? All of those things which historically trainees haven't necessarily been terribly good at understanding, but which would really help you be a useful member of the firm if you could understand. You may have heard of the O-shaped lawyer. That's the pretty logo there. The O-shaped lawyer, if you Google them, they're a group of in-house lawyers who've got together and said, okay, so what attributes do we want our external lawyers to have? They've sort of pinned down what they think those are, and we have worked with them to ensure that Essentials for Practice helps you to develop those attributes as you go. So that is the most popular thing that we have to offer for you. And of course, you would, in addition to doing that master's, you would need to have those 2 years of qualifying work experience. You don't have to do them after your master's. You could have done them already, provided you can have it signed off by somebody who is a England and Wales solicitor. That is fine. You don't have to do it in this strict order, but this is just for illustration. So this is the key course that a lot of people follow with BPP. The other one we'll just have on the next slide, Rob, which is students who are not law graduates. We have a different master's, which quite a lot of people do as well. And that is a master's which consists 2/3 of our law conversion course, which in itself is a postgraduate diploma in law. But then the final third is the SQE1 preparation module that I talked about earlier, which when you add all of that together, that is a master's degree. And again, for that, you would be able to access master's funding. And then if you were to pursue that route, you would then go on to do SQE2. And if you wanted, you could also pursue Essentials for Practice, but that wouldn't be part of the master's, it would be a separate course. So you just click on Rob, that's it. Fab. And yes, of course, again, you'd want to do your qualifying work experience at a time to suit you around that. I think I'm handing back to you, Rob, aren't I?
Yes, that's right. So let's come now to one of the essential questions that students have been asking, attendees have been asking. How do you go about preparing well for the SQE? Well, there are a lot of resources that are available. And we've recently launched some free resources which are open to everyone, whether they're students of ours or not, and you'll find them at the website, which is listed here. And I think these slides will be sent out to you later, so you will have the links available. These give you a lot of resources that start you off on the process of preparing. So we'll give you samples of the workbooks that we use to help our students prepare. And we give you the criminal law workbook as an example. We also give you access to a lot of multiple choice questions to start practicing that functioning legal knowledge that Caroline has talked about in terms of SQE1. There's a lot more resources that go on there. There's mock assessments, there's online lectures on contract and introduction to criminal law, where you can start to see the process. But these are very much tasters, and it gives you a flavour of the sort of material that a really good course is going to give you to turbocharge that process of preparing for your course. And there really is, in our mind, no substitute for that. Now, people have their own way of learning. Some people do find that the online self-study course works for them, but I think for the vast majority of students, they really need the input and the feedback that comes with a course like this. So this gives you a sample of the sort of thing, but the more you can practice MCQs, the more you can practice analysing a legal problem and how you would do that, the better you're going to go. Now, I'm also going to refer you to some other open resources available from other sources, which are important. So Caroline's mentioned the SQE website, the SRA's SQE website, which has a host of useful information about the course, timings of assessment, processes, etc. So that's one definitely to bookmark and to keep referring back to see what's going on. The SQE assessments themselves are set by an organisation called Kaplan, to whom the SRA have contracted. And Kaplan have sample questions for both SQE1 and SQE2, and we have the link here that you can use. And then Pearson VUE, as Caroline has also mentioned, are the centre which provide the location for SQE1 assessments. And so Pearson VUE have provided an online version of the test environment so that you can actually get used to that as well. Really important, as Caroline has said, it is very tightly controlled. I think the most you're allowed to take into the room, if I understand, is a bottle of water, and that is literally it. Not even a bottle of water. I suppose there might be some notes written on the back of the label or something like that.
I think you can barely take in your wristwatch, so it's very limited.
Well, yeah, I can imagine they wouldn't allow wristwatches in modern wristwatches anyway. So it really is a matter of seal. So you can see the process there. Caroline, is there any last point? We're going to come to the questions in a moment. Any last point you wanted to add to that we haven't already covered?
No, I think, well, the only thing I'd probably just add, you mentioned that link at the top of the slide. It is enormously important because a thing to remember is that we, of course, now have a really fluent understanding of the SQE, but we do not run the SQE. The SRA owns the process and everything about it. We have to go to this website to find out the dates and what are the new rules on the particular thing, or what's going to be their approach on a particular point for QWE. And I say we, as providers who know a lot about this, have to go there too. So if you've got a question about the regime itself, actually you may need to go to the website, and if you can't get the answer there, it may well be useful for you just to use the inquiries, and there's a contact us section which you can use for inquiries about the SQE if you've got specific questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Caroline. So it's now over to the questions that we've got here. So Dimitar, do you want to bring in the questions and we will answer them as we go through?
Yeah, of course. I saw, Caroline, you were quite on top of it already, which is great. Thank you for that. So I think someone has asked, as a third-year law student set to finish in June 2025, when should they apply and when is the start date?
So for this student, if they are looking to go straight into SQE study, I would recommend them to apply as soon as they're happy that they know what they want to do. The start date is the very beginning of September. Okay, so it'll be the 1st of September this year. Getting ready for those January SQE1 exams. If they're full-time, of course.
Great. And someone has asked, can a student outside the country enroll in the SQE1, or do you need to be in the UK?
You don't need to be in the UK. If you want to study in the UK, of course, you'll need to apply for a visa. If you, and of course you can, for anything longer than just a postgraduate certificate with us, you can apply for a visa, and that's fine. What I would say is if you're an overseas student and you want to study online, it's absolutely fine to do that from any country, any jurisdiction. That's no problem. Just bear in mind that you would need to be able to participate in real time. So I suppose the only challenge can be time difference.
Great. And Rob, I think maybe you could answer this one. Someone has asked, does BPP offer career support to find a training contract or other legal role for those self-funding the SQE?
Yes, absolutely. I sort of mentioned this earlier, but I was hoping somebody would ask this because I think it's really important. Yes, we have a thriving careers team who have a vast amount of experience in helping students through the process of every stage of the application process, and it is quite a complex process. So putting together CVs, putting together applications, because every firm has its own application process, they're all different. The process of assessment centres and interviews, so mock interviews, mock assessment centre tests, the sort of tests you will face in that. And we can tailor those to the individual firms because we often know from feedback we've had from our previous students what sort of questions they ask. And we also have lots of speakers coming in from different qualifying work experience providers, law firms, etc., talking about what they offer, what they're looking for in their trainees, etc. So it gives you the opportunity of really getting to know those, speaking to these people, speaking to people who work there and finding out what it's all about.
And what I would add to that, Rob, is that once you've applied, you can use our careers service. So you don't have to wait till September or February or whatever it might be. If you are going to apply, you're happy you're going to apply, get on to the Careers Service and begin to draw on their resources.
Perfect, thank you. And Olivia in the Q&A has said, I am a paralegal currently having left education in 2023. I'm now thinking of beginning the SQE, but having had some time out of education, what are your best pieces of advice for getting back into the education setting?
Okay, this is a tricky one, but I think to a certain extent, it's got to be taking the plunge, because at some point you've got to do that. Now, what I think you need to be doing between now and when you start the course is making use of the free resources that we have given you, that we've highlighted here, to start testing yourself. Now, I'm not sure from what Olivia says whether she has a law degree or not, but I think the first thing you need to be doing, if you do have a law degree, in fact you're a paralegal rather, so you may well do, is to dig out your old books if you have them and start going through some of the material to remind yourself of the key things. What might be useful is, we've mentioned the SRO website, we've still got that up here. One of the pieces of information on the SRO website is the specification for SQE1. And this lists in quite a lot of detail, once you drill down into it, exactly what topic areas are covered, what's covered with each topic area. So that helps you narrow down your focus. Use that specification to remind yourself, get back into your books, get back into revising. And then when you start the course, you're really hitting the ground running in terms of doing well on the course and doing well on SQE.
And I think the other thing I would say, Rob and Olivia, is that the way that we help people ease into this when you get close to the start of your program is that we run a series of what we call pre-induction sessions in the 2 months before the beginning of the program. So that we're in the middle of doing those now for February, for the end of February. And we provide people who are enrolled with access to BPP's materials for those underlying law subjects at that stage to allow them to use our materials to get back up to speed. So Rob's absolutely right. In the earlier stages, do use the notes you have already, making sure you're focusing on what is covered in the SQE1 spec. But as you get close to beginning with us, you will have access to materials which we focused in on the SQE and make sure that it's really, really relevant what it is that you're refreshing. But also we provide, we have a whole area of our virtual learning environment which is committed to helping people revise for the SQE with various checklists and ways to sort of help structure your revision. So if you sign up for a program with us, you'll have access to that from early on, and you'll be able to use that to help you get up to speed.
Thank you both. Another question from Benjamin in the Q&A section is, Benjamin said, I'm currently halfway through completing my GDL. I've applied for training contracts at some firms and waiting to hear back. And Benjamin is asking, is there anything you would advise they should do to prepare for the SQE now whilst they're doing the course?
Well, I think the first thing to say is carry on with the GDL, because I actually think, in a sense, those students doing the conversion course almost have a bit of advantage over LLB students, because all of the material you're learning at the moment on the GDL is absolutely relevant to SQE1. It is part of what you're going to be assessed on in SQE1. So keep the knowledge fresh that you've already done, carry on with the course. That is going to be clear preparation. I think beyond that, everything that Caroline and I have talked about in relation to Olivia's question about the pre-induction briefings, the use of the online materials to get yourself used to it, and then plunging into the SQE1 course is really what you need to be doing. Caroline, anything else you want to add to that?
The only thing I'd add to that, Benjamin hasn't said what GDL he's doing. If you're doing that sort of conversion with BPP, we're confident that it's absolutely tailored to the SQE. You'd want to just challenge, and I'm sure that you've already done this, Benjamin, just make sure that you're happy that with the provider you're studying with, that their materials are focused on the SQE in particular. And remember, if in doubt, you can look at that specification for SQE1, which is on the SRO website.
Perfect. Thank you both. Another question in the chat is for students starting the February LLM SQE prep course, when would you suggest they book SQE1?
So I'll take this one because this is on my camp. You can't yet book the next sit of SQE1. They've not actually released the dates yet. I imagine they will very shortly publish what the dates are going to be for the next sit of SQE1. But bear in mind, as I said, they've only just had the January SQE1 centralised assessments last week. So the next sit, as I say, is in July. I would expect the booking to be in probably late March, early April. But if you join us in February, we'll make sure that we give you all the information as it's published, and we give you various guidance on how to book. The good news is, if you've got friends who've booked in the past for the SQE, you might have heard some horror stories about being like a sort of tickets for Glastonbury or something, and everybody sitting and refreshing and it all being a bit of a nightmare. Happily, that's no longer the way they book SQE. They've realised there are too many people for that. So it's a much calmer process than it was before. Just be aware, if you're thinking about sitting in the next sit, you have to submit a form with your preference, and then the SRA goes away and thinks about the forms for a couple of weeks. But it's first come, first served on the forms. So as and when you do book, when the forms are issued, it's worth having a plan to sit down and fill it in immediately and submit it. But we'll give you all of the guidance on that close to the time. And if you want to know what the timings are when they're published, that will be on that website that's at the top of the slide.
Great, thank you, Caroline. Someone in the chat has said they're sitting in July. Then is there any chance to enroll with BPP now?
If you're a full-time student, Jerry, yes, absolutely. If you were part-time, you wouldn't be ready for the July sit, you'd be ready for the following January sit, the way that we structure the programmes. But if you're studying full-time, you could enrol in February and sit in July, yes.
And just following up on that, the same attendee has asked, does the BPP fees include the costs of the exams?
No, they don't. So that was why I was sort of highlighting when I talked about the fees, the fact that you need to think about how you will fund that separately from your programme. But the level of the fees mean that it's important to make sure you're well prepared, so you only have to pay them once.
Okay, great. And another attendee is self-funding, and they would like some advice on choosing a prep course.
I'm just looking at which question this is, Dimitar. Oh. If you'd like advice on choosing a BPP course, if you call our admissions team, they've got brilliant experience in all of the different programmes. I've talked about some of the key ones, but there are others you might want to think about. So have a look at our website, but then give the admissions team a call and they'll be able to talk you through what works for you and what timings would work for you.
Perfect. I think this is about as much as we have time for. So I would like to finish off with a final poll to get an idea of what our students have gotten out of this session. So it should be popping up on your screen right now. So please, the attendees, so if you could please answer this poll. So what's your key takeaway from today? Just going to give you a few more seconds to put your vote in. Okay. Just going to share these results. So majority of you have said that you're feeling a lot more confident about how the SQE works, which is great. And quite a lot of you said that you gain a better understanding of how to prepare for the SQE as well, which is great. So thanks for that. It's great to see what you've taken from the session. Before you go, just another reminder to attendees that we'll be sending out a link containing the recorded session. So please keep an eye out for that. A survey will also be popping up once this masterclass has ended. So please fill that in to let us know how you've enjoyed today and what other topics you would like to see us cover in the future. And again, remember to check out our other upcoming masterclasses with BPP on how to fund your legal studies and also how to boost commercial awareness as well. And also check out all our other events on the page as well. And I would like to thank our panelists, Rob and Caroline, again, for this excellent presentation and also great answers on the Q&A. And yeah, thank you so much for coming along, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.